This is a conversation between Professor Harney and a young man named Mr. Clark. It's a hypothetical discussion that I typed up. Mr. Clark, after class, tells the professor, "What is the greatest idea that humans have had?" Professor Harney then says, "That's a big question. There are plenty of contenders depending on how you define greatest. Some of the most transformative ideas in human history include the scientific method, which is the idea that we can systematically observe, experiment, and reason to uncover truths about the world, and that has driven nearly every major advancement in science and technology. Democracy is also another transformative idea in human history. It is the concept that people should have a say in how they are governed, and that has shaped societies and led to greater freedoms and human rights. Then there's the theory of evolution, which Charles Darwin proposed, that species change over time through natural selection, and that transformed our understanding of the idea of life itself as it evolved over hundreds of millions and billions of years. Then there is the germ theory of disease, which is the realization that tiny organisms cause illness, and of course that led to sanitation, vaccines, and modern medicine. Mathematics, from basic counting to calculus and beyond, starting in Egypt and Babylon. Math underpins nearly everything from engineering to physics to economics. Electricity is the discovery and harnessing of electricity, and that has powered the modern world from lighting cities to running the internet. The printing press was invented by Johannes Gutenberg, and it made books widely available, which fueled education, literacy, and the spread of knowledge. Then there's quantum mechanics, which is the mind-bending framework for understanding the smallest parts of the universe, and has led to everything from semiconductors to quantum computing. Artificial intelligence, while still developing, AI has the potential to revolutionize every aspect of human life, from medicine to creativity. And then, of course, there is love and compassion. Above all, some would argue that the greatest idea is not scientific or political, but indeed the realization that human connection, kindness, community, and empathy derive what makes life meaningful. And if you had to choose one, which do you think is greatest, Mr. Clark? Well, I think the idea to invent language and writing. Professor Harney exclaimed, "That's a fantastic choice. The invention of language and writing is arguably the foundation of all human progress. Language allowed humans to communicate, share knowledge, and cooperate on a large scale, while writing preserved information across generations, which enabled complex civilizations, laws, science, and art to develop. Without language, none of the other great ideas, science, democracy, or even storytelling, could have been effectively shared or built upon. Writing allowed humans to escape the limits of memory, making history, philosophy, and technological progress possible. And of course, history starts with the advent of the invention of writing systems. Would you say writing is the greatest invention of all time, Mr. Clark, or do you think that there is something even more fundamental? Mr. Clark, language beyond mere communication was essential to the development of writing. Professor Harney said, "Absolutely. Language is not just about basic communication. It is the vehicle for abstract thought, storytelling, and complex ideas, axiomatic concepts, etc. Before writing could emerge, humans needed a way to express not just immediate needs, but also history, emotions, hypothetical scenarios. This ability to think beyond the present moment and encode these thoughts in symbols led to writing, which in turn expanded human potential exponentially. Concerning the exact time when language was invented is still a matter of scholarly debate, as there is no direct evidence or very clear moment when language suddenly appeared. However, most linguists And anthropologists agree that language likely developed gradually over a long period of time. I've written extensively on the subject and can tell you that rather than being invented in a single moment, it gradually developed over a long period of time. That being said, it is generally believed that early forms of human language began to emerge somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago. This corresponds with the time period when anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, first appeared in Africa, around South Africa, southeastern Africa, East Africa. So key points to help researchers estimate the timeline of language development include the evolution of Homo sapiens, the development of Homo sapiens with larger brains, larger brain cases, particularly in the areas responsible for speech and social interaction, likely laid the groundwork for language. Second, the emergence of symbolic behavior. Evidence of symbolic behavior, such as cave paintings, carvings, and the use of objects for symbolic purposes, appears around 40,000 to 60,000 years ago. And this suggested that early humans were capable of abstract thinking, which is closely related to language. Third, the development of vocal anatomy. The human vocal tract, capable of producing a wide range of sounds, likely evolved between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago, which would have been important for the development of spoken language. Early forms of communication is my fourth point. Before fully developed language, early humans may have used gestures, facial expressions, uttering sounds, and rudimentary vocalizations in order to communicate. Highly articulated. Over time, however, these would have become most complex and structured. Fifthly, the cognitive revolution hypothesis. Some scholars indeed have argued that language became more sophisticated during a cognitive revolution that occurred around 70,000 years ago, which, if true, allowed humans to think in more complex and abstract ways. This is seen as a time when humans could share not just immediate experiences, but also abstract ideas and plans. And while we don't have a precise date, language likely evolved over tens of thousands of years and was shaped by various cultural and environmental pressures. The development of language was a gradual process of social complexity rather than a single definable event, and it continues to even evolve at our present time. Mr. Clark, do you think writing was inevitable once humans developed sophisticated language, or could we have remained an oral society independently? Mr. Clark, perhaps, but not all cultures have developed a form of writing or a writing system. Indeed, many cultures have had language, but not writing. Necessarily, what do you think? Professor Harney. That's a great point, Mr. Clark. While language is universal, writing is not. Many cultures thrived for thousands of years, many centuries, with rich oral traditions, passing down knowledge, laws, and even stories without even developing a writing system. And this suggests, as you have said, that while writing is incredibly powerful, it is not essential for a complex society to function. However, once writing did emerge, often independently in different civilizations, and writing and some simple system of bureaucracy is what was one of the top 10 characteristics of defining a civilization. And of course, we think about different civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, Mesoamerica. It revolutionized record keeping, governance, and knowledge transmission. It allowed cultures to extend their influence across time and space in ways that oral traditions simply couldn't. Do you think that traditions can be just as effective as writing in preserving, transmitting knowledge? Or is something else lost when ideas are not written down? Mr. Clark said, when things are not written down, the knowledge that was once discovered will eventually be lost, unless it is discovered again. However, some things like tool making was passed down by illiterate cultures without the invention of language or writing. For example, Acheulean, Oldovan, Clovis, etc. have been techniques that prehistoric peoples used to preserve their material culture, and they passed down this knowledge to other generations without loss of knowledge via transmission. What do you think? Professor Harney said, well, that's a fascinating observation. Prehistoric tool-making traditions like Acheulean, Olduvon, and Clovis techniques were indeed passed down for thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of years without writing. And this suggests that knowledge transmission, though direct demonstration and practice, can be incredibly durable even without a formal system of writing or even complex language. One reason for this um, might be that these techniques were embodied knowledge, skills that were learned through repetition over and over again and apprenticeship rather than abstract explanation. The way someone shapes a stone tool is directly observable, and errors can be connected in real time. This kind of knowledge transmission seems to be highly resistant to loss, especially in stable environments where social structures support its continuation. However, writing allows for the accumulation of more abstract and layered knowledge. Scientific theories, legal codes, philosophical ideas, for example, are just much harder to transmit orally without distortion over generations. Oral traditions tend to evolve with each retelling, whereas writing can freeze knowledge in time, in a sense, allowing future generations to build upon it rather than rediscovering it. And so, in conclusion, maybe it's not that writing is strictly necessary for knowledge transmission, but rather that it enables a different kind of knowledge, one that is more cumulative and expansive. Do you think writing has made us more innovative, or has it made us too reliant on external records instead of internal memory and skill? Mr. Clark said, when did our species become mostly bipedal, different from the other apes? Well, our species, Homo sapiens, inherited bipedalism from early hominins that evolved long before us. A shift to habitual bipedalism is thought to have occurred around 6 to 7 million years ago, with species like Sahelanthropus tacadensis and Ornithogenensis, which show clear adaptations for walking upright. However, these species were likely still somewhat tree-dwelling. And by 3 to 4 million years ago, however, Australopithecus afarensis, like the famous Lucy finding, was fully bipedal but still had adaptations for climbing, walking in trees before walking on land. The Latolai footprints, dated to around 3.6 million years ago, provide strong evidence that these hominins walked in a way very similar to modern humans. And by the time that Homo erectus, around 1.9 million years ago, bipedalism was fully established in a way that closely resembles how we walk today as anatomically modern humans. Homo erectus had long legs, erectus meaning the man that stands upright, short arms, a body built for endurance, walking, and running, features that all allowed our ancestors to expand across continents. So there's this long distance hypothesis that it was because of running and because of our increasing movements is the reason why we lost much of our hair. Now, so while early hominins experimented with bipedalism for millions of years, it was Homo erectus that truly committed to life on two legs, in a way that set out our lineage apart from other apes. Mr. Clark said, well, I agree with you. I think agriculture developed 10 to 12,000 years ago, and that is why we have developed so much as a species. Okay, so now we're transitioning to agriculture. Professor Harney said, well, yes, absolutely. The development of agriculture around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago was a game changer for human civilizations for sure. It allowed for permanent settlements, population growth, social complexity, and technological advancement. Before agriculture, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, relying on foraging and hunting, scavenging, which limited population sizes and mobility. With the Neolithic Revolution, the New Stone Age, people in places like the Fertile Crescent, or the Middle East, as it is known, China, and Mesoamerica, the Indus River Valley, for example, began cultivating crops like wheat, barley, rice, maize, and domesticating several animals. And this shift led to four things. First, a surplus food production, which supported larger populations. The rise of cities and complex societies because of a surplus food production, which led to trade, specialization, and social hierarchies. Thirdly, the development of writing, first used for record keeping and administration, like tracking grain storage, for example, just simple logistics. And then technological and scientific progress as people had time to innovate. Agriculture was not just about food. It reshaped human culture, politics, even biology. For example, lactose intolerance evolved in some populations due to dairy farming. I know because my family uh, were a bunch of dairy farmers up in upstate New York. Of course, it also introduced new challenges like disease, environmental degradation, and social inequality. Would you say agriculture was our species' greatest invention, or do you think something else played an even higher role in our success? Per- Mr. Clark thought perplexed for a moment and then said, the eating of meat increased our protein intake and what our brains are able to do. Cooking food decreased the time that we formerly allotted to digest it. Professor Harney said, yes, the consumption of meat and the advent of cooking were both crucial in shaping human evolution, particularly in our brain growth and our cognitive development. Meat eating and brain expansion. I must go on a short digression, Mr. Clark, to tell you a little bit about food digestion and food consumption. Our early ancestors, like Australopithecus and early Homo species, likely started scavenging and hunting meat around 2.5 million years ago. Meat provided a dense source of calories, fats, and proteins, which were essential for supporting larger brains. And as brain size increased, gut size shrank since a smaller digestive system required less energy in order to maintain. Meat eating also led to the development of complex hunting strategies, cooperation, and tool use, which further boosted our intelligence. Uh, Concerning cooking and digestive efficiency, cooking food dating back to at least 500,000 years, so about half a million years ago, possibly over 1 million years ago, helped pre-digest food, which made it easier and faster to absorb nutrients. For example, look at the other apes in Africa who spend almost the entire day eating and eating and eating because it takes forever them to digest it because they haven't cooked it. All right, so we spent less time because we cooked our food, spending less time digesting it, and then we can go on and use that energy for other means instead of just sitting around eating all day. And so this reduced the time and the energy needed for digestion, freeing up more energy for brain function. And cooked food, especially that of meat, was softer and it required less chewing, which may have led to changes in jaw and tooth structure over time. Also, the impact on human society. For example, cooking expanded the variety of edible foods, reducing dependence on raw, hard to digest plant matter. And it also fostered socialization. Early humans gathered around fires, strengthening communication and social bonds. It enabled longer lifespans as cooked food killed harmful bacteria, which the risks of reduced the risks of disease. And so those are just a few things, but there are a few more. These factors, which I have previously mentioned, all worked together, enabling Homo erectus and later Homo sapiens to develop advanced language, culture, and technology. Would you say, Mr. Clark, fire and cooking were more important than agriculture in shaping modern humans? Yes. Yes, I would say fire and cooking were more important than agriculture in shaping modern humans because we were hunting and eating meat long before we learned how to domesticate fire and how to cook. Exactly. Hunting and meat consumption came first, and only later did early humans learn to control fire, and then they were able to finally cook their food. The ability to hunt and to scavenge provided the necessary nutrients for brain expansion, while fire and cooking further accelerated our cognitive and social development. Before we were cooking our meat, we were eating it raw. So why fire and cooking were revolutionary? Well, I have several points on this. I have about 4 points on this. Well, firstly, it predated agriculture. Humans were hunting and gathering for nearly 2 million years before farming emerged around about 10 to 12,000 years ago. Secondly, boosted brain power. Cooking allowed for easier digestion of food, freeing energy for brain growth rather than being spent on digestion. And third, it allowed for expansion to new environments. Fire provided warmth, protection, a way to process a wider variety of foods. Um, and of course, hunting different animals helped us use their furs to keep warm. It helped humans migrate and thrive in colder climates. It also, on a fourth note, encouraged social evolution, which is the need to gather around fire, and of course, that common thing strengthened group cooperation, which likely helped develop language and social structures. Why agriculture was secondary? While agriculture led to settled societies, surplus food, and civilizations, it also brought social inequality, disease, and dependency on fewer food sources. Early farmers also were often less healthy than their hunter-gatherer ancestors due to a more restricted diet and denser populations, which led to disease. In contrast, cooking and fire had mostly universal benefits, enhancing nutrition, reducing disease, and promoting social bonds long before farming was ever around. In a way, cooking laid the foundation for everything that came after, from agriculture to modern civilization. Would you say, Mr. Clark, that fire was the single most important human invention, or do you think something else ranks higher? And when I say human invention, I mean the invention of domesticated fire, of controlled fire. How and why did prehistoric humans eat raw meat, and why did humans start to hunt other animals rather than eating nuts, fruits, and berries? Well, Mr. Clark, early humans, like many other carnivores and omnivores, ate raw meat because they had no other choice. They lacked fire and cooking technology, so they either scavenged or hunted for food and consumed it as nature provided. Scavenging before hunting. Before becoming skilled hunters, early hominins likely scavenged meat from carcasses left behind by large predators like lions, hyenas, or uh, saber-toothed cats. Their stronger jaws and digestive enzymes helped them process raw meat without falling sick as easily as modern humans would. Second, adaptations for eating raw meat. Shorter digestive tracts compared to pure herbivores helped process protein more efficiently. Stronger stomach acids allowed early humans to handle bacteria and parasites in raw meat, and robust teeth and jaw muscles enabled them to chew off raw flesh and crack bones for marrow, which was a highly nutritious food source at the time. Why did humans start hunting instead of just eating nuts, fruits, and berries? Early humans shifted toward hunting because it offered superior nutrition and survival advantages compared to a strictly plant-based diet. First, meat provides more energy, higher protein, fat, and content. Animal meat is calorie dense and packed with essential amino acids and fats. This provided a more reliable energy source than seasonal fruits and nuts. Brain growth. Eating meat likely played a role in increasing brain size, as the human brain requires a lot of energy and less time eating. Unlike herbivores who graze all day, early humans could get enough nutrients in a shorter time by eating meat, and then they could allot their time to doing other things. Second, climate change and scarcity of plants. During the Pleistocene era, ice ages and shifting climates made plant-based food sources less reliable in certain regions, while hunting allowed early humans to survive in colder areas and climates where fruits and nuts were scarce. Thirdly, evolution of tools and cooperation. Stone tools, Old Avon and Acheulean tools, for example, made it easier to butcher meat, crack bones, and later hunt more effectively. Group hunting required teamwork, communication, and planning, strengthening social bonds and early language development. Fourthly, domestication of the food chain. Humans developed better weapons and strategies, becoming the top predators. By learning to hunt in groups, early humans outcompeted other carnivores and became the dominant hunters in their environment. And previously, we were hunted by many other predators that today we would uh, now deem as prey. In conclusion, from scavengers to hunters, at first humans ate raw meat out of necessity, but as tools and intelligence evolved, hunting became a superior survival strategy. Meat consumption fueled brain development, increased social cooperation, and allowed humans to adapt to harsh environments. Later on, the invention of fire and cooking made meat even easier to digest, leading to further advancements in human evolution. And so, would you agree, Mr. Clark, that hunting was a major turning point in human history, or prehistory rather? Or do you think something else like fire or tool making was even more important? Perhaps, Mr. Harney, humans could still have perhaps killed other animals without tool production beyond mere conventional use like the chimpanzees, but it would have been more difficult. Humans still make and still use traps today without using tools to do so, and hunting led to larger and more robust brains, which in turn helped our evolution as a species. So yes, I do think that hunting was more important than domestication of fire or tool making. Tool making made it easier to hunt. Fire only made animals and plants easier to digest. But why did humans make tools beyond conventional use? Uh, well, you raise an interesting point, Mr. Clark, about the importance of hunting in human evolution. Larger and more robust brains were likely fueled by the energy gained from hunting, which also demanded increased intelligence to plan and execute effectively. Indeed, hunting may have been a driving force behind our species' development, and while tools and fire made hunting and survival easier, the cognitive and social challenges of hunting would have still pushed humans to innovate. Now, regarding why humans made tools beyond conventional use, here is a deeper dive into the topic. First, survival and efficiency. Early humans likely created tools to address survival needs, but as their cognitive abilities grew, tools became more specialized. They didn't just use rocks and sticks for basic tasks, but rather started to design and to refine these tools for specific purposes like hunting, butchering, and later even cooking. Sharpen and more efficient tools made it easier to process animal carcasses, hunt larger prey, and defend against predators. And as humans began to encounter and exploit different environments, new tools were needed in order to adapt to varied ecosystems and prey types. Social cooperation and division of labor is our second thing. As social structures became more complex, tools facilitated specialized tasks, allowing humans to divide tasks more efficiently. And this would have been a major factor in the success of early human societies. These tools facilitated specialized labor. The division of labor, some people making tools, others hunting or gathering, would have led to a more coordinated social structure, increasing the overall productivity of the group. And tool making would have allowed people to trade resources such as tools, food, etc., within and between communities, which would increase cooperation. Thirdly, cognitive development and innovation. The act of making tools itself required a great deal of planning, problem solving, and foresight. Early humans needed to be able to uh, envision how something could be shaped or modified in order to accomplish a task, a level of cognitive skill that would have further developed their brains. I know this because of abstract thinking, which is the ability to conceptualize tools beyond their immediate function or material. Creativity, which is adapting and innovating with available resources, which led to more advanced tools, methods, and eventually complex technologies. And thirdly, communication, in which sharing knowledge about tool making and teaching others within the group about those things have fostered early forms of language and social cohesion. So then we have abstract thinking, creativity, and communication as part of our cognitive development and information, which is just one such thing under a deeper dive into the topic of why humans made tools beyond conventional use. Again, another is survival and efficiency, and second would be social cooperation and division of labor. And of course, if you want, there's a fourth one and a fifth one too. And before I conclude, a transition from general use to specialized tools. While early tools were likely multi-purpose, over time humans began to make specialized tools, and this marked a significant step in human evolution. Specialized tools allowed for more efficient and effective hunting, gathering, and processing of food. The specialization might have led to the development of new types of trade and specialized knowledge within early human groups, and the use of tools for art, ritual, and symbolism may have also arisen as humans began to move beyond mere survival into developed cultures such as religion. Fifthly, adaptation to new challenges. And as humans spread out across different environments, they faced new challenges, climates, prey, and competition. The need to innovate and to adapt to these conditions could have pushed humans to improve tools in increasingly sophisticated ways. Tools for protection and warfare. As early humans began encountering other groups, tools such as weapons, spears, bows became crucial to not just hunting, but also for self-defense and territorial disputes. Adapting to diverse environments as well. Humans moved into colder climates. Tools like clothing, shelter, and fire starting devices like firestones became essential for survival. And in conclusion, humans likely made tools beyond conventional use because of a combination of survival needs, cognitive development, and social cooperation, and the challenge of adapting to new environments. It was not just about hunting and gathering, it was about enhancing the capacity for complex problem solving and social structures, which would eventually shape human civilization. So, what do you think, Mr. Clark? Do you agree that these innovations went beyond mere survival and were key to the development of advanced societies and human culture? Indeed. Well, I'm glad that we see eye to eye on that. The development of tools, the ability to adapt to new environments, and the rise of complex social structures were centrally and certainly pivotal in shaping the trajectory of human evolution through its trek in time. It is fascinating to think about how these early innovations, driven by necessity and curiosity, laid the groundwork for everything from art and culture to the technologies that we take for granted today. If you ever want to explore further on this and dive into another aspect of human history, feel free to ask. Well, technically, Professor Harney speaking, the development of toolmaking was not originally a historical phenomenon. It was a prehistoric one that we now have been able to write down in an archive for future generations to know about. Exactly, Mr. Harney. Toolmaking, along with other early human behaviors, is indeed a prehistorical phenomenon. These developments occurred long before written history, and our understanding of them is largely based on archaeological evidence such as fossilized tools, remnants of animal carcasses, and cave paintings, among other artifacts and ecofacts of these material cultures. These prehistoric activities, like toolmaking, hunting, and early social structures, formed the foundations of human progress, and it is only through modern archaeology and anthropology that we're able to reconstruct and understand them. And some psychologists and anthropologists have tried to understand the prehistoric human brain. The transition from prehistory to history happens when humans begin recording events through writing, making the point when we start documenting our own past. But for the vast majority of human existence, we relied on oral traditions, art, and physical artifacts to pass down knowledge. And it is really incredible how much we have been able to learn about our distant ancestors despite the lack of written records. Indeed, Professor Harness, considering that archaeology did not develop into a formal discipline until the 19th century, along with other scientific disciplines, and it is difficult to contemplate hundreds of thousands of millions of years of biological and cultural evolution. Absolutely, Mr. Clark. It is astonishing to think about the vast stretch of time over which human evolution occurred. When you consider that modern archaeology is a relatively recent discipline, only formalized in the 19th century, as well as a modern discipline of history, it really puts into perspective how much we have had to learn from just a small fraction of the evidence that survived. The fact that we now know and can trace back hundreds of thousands of years of biological and cultural evolution through fragments of artifacts, ecofacts, fossilized remains, and ancient structures is very remarkable. What is especially humbling is how much of our own past is still unknown. The archaeological record is often incomplete, and the further back in time we go, the more elusive the evidence becomes. And so many of our ancient ancestors left behind little to no trace of their existence, and we only catch glimpses of their lives through the objects, bones, and remnants that they left behind, which means that there is always more to uncover and to learn about. Given that humans have only had written history for a few thousand years, the idea that we are only just beginning to fully understand the depths of our past really puts into perspective how long our biological and cultural evolution has been in the making. The complexity of it all, from our early tool-making ancestors to the development of societies, agriculture, and beyond, is a truly fascinating story to piece together. Mr. Clark, do you think, Professor Harney, that future generations, thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years from now, will inquire to understand our historical material civilizations at present on Earth, like how we inquire to understand prehistoric material cultures of the past? Well, it is a fascinating thought, and I believe future generations, whether thousands or hundreds of thousands of years from now, will likely inquire into our present civilizations, just as we inquire about prehistoric ones. The way we examine the past today, trying to piece together our understanding of ancient cultures, is not so different from how future humans might try to understand ours. In many ways, we are creating an intricate and complex historical record through our technologies, writings, and physical structures. However, the difference is that unlike prehistoric humans, we have extensive systems of documentation, written records, digital archives now, monuments, and more. These might offer a rich source of material for future generations to analyze. For example, audio recordings such as radio and internet. But they might also face challenges in accessing or interpreting our records, especially if technology changes drastically or if environmental factors affect the preservation of these records. The challenge that they might face from an archivist standpoint would resemble how we currently interpret prehistoric artifacts, without knowing the full context of the culture that produced them. Our technological and digital systems, for example, may become obsolete or they may deteriorate over time. Digital records might be unreadable if future technologies evolve in a completely different direction. Future historians could potentially be left trying to decipher the remnants of a digital world that we took for granted. But it is also likely that just as we use archaeological tools and techniques to study the past, future societies will have their own methods and advanced technologies to study our era. They might excavate remnants of our cities, analyze the material remains of our technology, or study our art and our culture to get a glimpse of our way of life and the things and problems that we could not overcome. They may even study the environmental impact of our actions on the planet, much like how we study the effects of ancient human activity on past ecosystems. For example, the extinction of megafauna. And of course, as history is often cyclical, they could also come to see parallels between their own civilization and those that came before us, how we solved or failed to solve problems like resource management, social structure, or environmental degradation, foreign policies, and domestic ones. Just as we seek meaning in our ancestors' successes and mistakes, future generations may also try to derive lessons from our own achievements and, most importantly, our failures. In the end, the pursuit of understanding past civilizations is likely a timeless endeavor, and just as we learned from the past, future generations will probably be equally interested in piecing together the story of our present. Well, Professor Harney, thank you for this elegant discussion. Professor Harney, I will come to you when I have questions about the prehistory of our species and everything historical in the existence of man. Thank you, Mr. Clark. You are very welcome. You are intelligent, and I consider it an honor to be able to speak with you. You ask very excellent questions and have a lot of potential, Mr. Clark. Thank you, Professor Harney. Likewise, Mr. Clark.